You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
What's up, Coaches Nation? So excited to see you again. I'm Dr. Sherry Flewellen with our co-host Faisal Ansan. And today we have a super special guest for you. I'm so excited about this conversation. Her name is Michelle Weimer. She is a kick butt coach. What we're going to talk about today is a really hot topic among coaches. If you're in a Facebook group for coaches, you are going to see people asking about this, talking about it, having discussions about it all over the place because it's such a critical piece of growth for coaches. And it is this, beta coaching. If you've never heard of the term, you're going to learn all about it and why you need to be doing it. But we're going to talk about why it's so important and how to actually do it in a way that's going to make you amazing. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, let's talk about some wins for the week. Michelle, because you're our special guest, I would love you to start. Just share with us a win that you had this week.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me on. I mean, honestly, that might be one of my wins, is just being able to be here with you guys, enjoying the opportunity to talk to other coaches about how important it is to do beta coaching always, right? If you want to level up, and it doesn't matter what level you at, even if you're already a master coach, part of what gets you to continue on to the next level is continuing to practice and hone in on your skills. So honestly, that's probably my big win for this week, is getting to be here with you guys.
Yay!
Hey, that's a great
I'll
win
take
for us.
it. Faisal.
Thank you, Michelle, and so excited for you to be here. I love my conversations with you, so definitely a win for me too. One other win I want to share is that I'm in a process that I went through a whole negotiation phase that didn't work out. Now we're in another big negotiation, which I really love the process because you're connecting with people where you're learning from them. You're trying to create something together. And that collaboration piece for me is a huge win because you not only learn, but you grow with these people as you're trying to create something to serve so many people. So
Faisal, when you say negotiation, are you talking hostage negotiation or what?
Yeah, that's, damn it, did I spell that out? I'm part of those. No, it's just it's a negotiation with an organization that we're going to be working with to just serve coaches. I can't talk about the details at this point, but it is working with an organization to bring in coaches to serve their clients.
Oh, okay. Thanks for I was clear. It's like, wow, you're really diversifying. I'm really impressed.
That's how he gets his clients, Dr. Sherry.
Right? I knew there was a secret. So I would say my win for the week is not so much that something amazing happened, but that it really reminded me the importance of being in a community of like-minded people. And so just quickly, I started what's called the Cheyenne Real Estate Investors Association at the beginning of the year. For anybody that's investors, this is like a national thing. There's RIAs all over the place. They're really important because it allows investors and people that support investors to come together and collaborate, share deals or pass off deals and stuff like that. But there's never been one in this area. And I was like, well, of course, I'll just start one. It's really been challenging and I've not gotten traction on it. I'll have 2 or 3 people show up to these meetings and it's really been discouraging. And so I was at the point where I'm just like, screw it. If nobody wants to come, I'm just not going to do it because it's a lot of energy and emotional energy for me. So last night was a meeting and we had 3 people attend besides my husband and myself. And I was just, and so the mindset, the perspective around it wasn't, I just had this shift of it's not about serving 50 people. It's about if the people that come are super excited and get value and we share, which we do, then I'm just going to keep this a really intimate, private, smaller group and make it more of an exclusive feel, like, and just really keep it small, intentionally small. So that was just a complete mind shift. And the only reason that I had that shift is because I'm in a few different communities with other entrepreneurs and other coaches where we have the mindset of how do you serve your people the best? And it's not always what you think it's going to be. You serve them in the way that you realize they need or they want, and just persevere and just keep on doing it. And so all of that stuff combined, I would have totally given up if I didn't have like all of these like memories of conversations or of people just talking about how they're persevering and they're realizing they had to pivot a little bit and how they're serving people. So that was a little bit long-winded, but so it's really a learning thing and just a reminder of how important it is to learn from other people. So there you go.
That's awesome. And that's the power of the community.
Absolutely. Speaking of community, our sponsor for the Coach's Journey is the Coaching Mastery Community. Faisal, share with us how amazing and what this is and the impact that it can have on a coach.
So I'd love Michelle to talk about it this time because she's been part of our community too. Like they are, and we're all members of the community. But I'd love Michelle to share like what do we do in Coaching Mastery community and how are we trying to serve.
Perfect. Yeah, actually, I'm so glad you asked me that because I think that our community is something that has been a huge factor in my own growth. Number one, because of the opportunity to do beta coaching, which I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, but also, like Dr. Sherry was just saying, like that community piece, when you have other like-minded people that you're connecting with on a regular basis. And you know what, you guys, as an entrepreneur, and I've been doing this since 2005, out of my home, way before, working virtually was cool. I was doing it. And I think that, you can start to feel kind of alone. You start to feel like, man, I have no one to connect with. I have no one to bounce ideas off of. And one of the really, really great things about the Coaching Mastery community is that there are plenty of people who are either farther along on the journey than you or not quite there yet, that you collaborate and you learn with and you communicate with, and just the feedback that you get when you are on those, those weekly calls, or when you are taking advantage of the opportunity to not only coach, but be coached. It's just a phenomenal opportunity. And I have to say this, I've been a part of a lot of masterminds throughout the years. I have never been a part of one like this. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know if it's, the work that you guys do to just add so much value, or how you bring people in, the quality of the people that are in this community, the dedication and commitment. And as you guys probably know, if you're in a mastermind, if you're in any kind of a group, it is part of that commitment that we all take on to show up and to be there. And I know there have been times throughout the years when I've had to take a little hiatus and come back, but I always come back because there's such great value in it.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. And just to add to that, and as Michelle elaborated on that, what we do is there are two areas of there's a foundational focus that we have as the community pieces to support coaches within that supportive community to help them develop coaching mastery and business mastery. And a lot of those conversations that Michelle is talking about is along those lines. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for the kind words as well, Michelle.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. So to the meat and potatoes, because I'm in the Midwest, the meat and potatoes of today. Actually, I'm not in the Midwest, but I still feel like it. Anyway, that's another discussion. We're going to jump into beta coaching. Okay. So my first question is, why is it called beta coaching and not alpha coaching? I mean,
I never even thought of that actually. As soon as you said that, I think I know why.
Oh, please say, because I'm super curious.
Well, I would consider alpha coaching would be to coach your clients, your ideal clients. Beta coaching would be that you're practicing to get to that level.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing, whoever named it.
Well, that is a reasonable and logical answer. Thank you, Faisal.
No problem. I never thought of this, to be honest.
Well, that's what this is for, right? To get you to think about things you've never thought before. Okay, in all seriousness, Michelle, can you share a little bit about your journey into coaching and kind of what you've done, just kind of in generality since then? And then we're going to dive into how beta coaching has served you in your growth.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I've been doing this since 2005. And I have to say that throughout my career, there's been a lot of evolution. I started out as kind of that old school coach, which is what you learned back then. And throughout the years, I started to develop my own curriculum, my own ideas. I was constantly, working on improving how I could serve my clients. And then several years ago, I thought, you know what, I'm just at this point in my career where I was comfortable, everything was fine, but there's always another level. And I knew that I had the potential for more, and I was just really ready to go to that next level. And so that's actually when I started researching, like, what's next for me? What else can I do? How can I serve at a greater level? And I decided to get another certification as a certified high performance coach. And so, of course, anytime you up your game to another level, you have the opportunity to grow, and you need to work on it, right? And like I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter if you're already a master coach. The way you continue to hone your skills, the way you continue to serve your clients at a high level is practice, is that beta coaching. And so I got into certified high performance coaching. I got certified, and I actually got the opportunity to connect with Faisal and some of the others and join this community. And like I said, I feel like being a part of the coaching mastery community has been huge for me, because it not only got me connected with other coaches that were doing the same thing I was doing, right? Really wanting to hone in on their skills, go to that mastery level, learn something new, learn how to serve their coaches at a higher level, or excuse me, their clients. And it gave me the opportunity to, again, engage with others and practice that. So I just think that, if I could say this a million times today, I will, how important it is to continue to always be working on going to that next level for yourself, because I think we always have potential for more. And sometimes we get stuck in the routine of the day, of the week, of the month. And before we know it, we're kind of going through the motions, and then we're really not serving at the level that we could be. I don't even know if that answered your question, but I just got off on a tangent. That's where I wanted to go with that. I don't even remember what you asked me, Dr. Sherry, but I'm fired up about it because I think that it's so important. And one of the other things I want to say today is that for those who are new coaches out there that are watching this, I guarantee you're going to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. That imposter syndrome comes up, like, gosh, how can I get on a call with somebody and be at, be there to serve them, but I don't even, I don't even know how to take care of myself, or I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, absolutely, beta coaching is where it's at, because if you want to move past that, and by the way, like, I have this little thing that I do, or that I think about imposter syndrome and how to move past it. And I call it pass. You have to change your perspective, number one, because what most people who get into this imposter syndrome start to think is, they think, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's all the negative side of it. But the reality is, anytime any of us are going to a new level, we're going to feel that way, because it's not natural to us yet. It's not who we are yet. But that's okay. Like, that's part of growth. And that's why growth is so very important, and why we want to continue to push ourselves to the next level, is because that, like, if not, we become stagnant. So if you're feeling right now, if you're a new coach out there and you're feeling this imposter syndrome, like, who am I to go out and do this and help people? Embrace that. Like, change your perspective and embrace that, because that means you're pushing out of your comfort zone and you're pushing to a new level. And that's an excellent thing. That's exactly what we all want to be doing, is growing. And then the A is to take the action, whether that action is learn more, improve your knowledge, always be, in that growth mindset, or action in terms of the beta coaching, practicing, getting out there, whether it's friends that you have, whether it's fellow coaches, whether you're a part of this community and you have the opportunity to do the beta coaching with all of us, like practice it, take the actions. And then your sight is the one of the S's. It's that vision, it's the focus, it's the vision of, number one, who do I want to be? Maybe I'm not there yet. Maybe I'm not that master coach yet, but where am I setting my sights? Like, what's the identity that I want? I do want to be a professional coach. I do want to be a master coach. I do want to be of service to others. And so setting your sights and getting your focus on where you want to go, not where you currently are, because we're all at a place where, I mean, I assume both of you probably feel this, like you always know you want to go to another level, always. So instead of seeing it as like, oh gosh, I'm not there, go, oh, but that's where I'm going. And then the last S is service. And I think this one is so huge because when you are in imposter syndrome, when you are stuck there, your focus is all on you. And the reality is the whole reason you got into coaching is to serve others. So get very clear that it's about service. And when you focus in on serving your clients and being there for them, you know what, you guys, you just have to be one step ahead of them to be of service, to hold that light for them so that they can see their way along the journey. So anyway, I think that that's something that I really wanted to make sure we had time to talk about today, because I'm really passionate about it. And it breaks my heart when I hear other coaches or new coaches feeling like that. And then they don't want to put themselves out there. But that's what beta coaching really does, is it helps gives you that opportunity to practice, to get into it, to visualize or see the person that you want to be or the type of coach you want to be. And by connecting with others who are either farther along the journey or not quite there yet, you learn from them. So anyway.
I love that. That's really, I love how you created a framework around that. And I agree with all those things that you shared. Now, before we go deeper into it, because I know we're going to go deeper into this, I want to just kind of backtrack. And for those who are kind of either starting out or just to understand what we're talking about here, is whether you've just gotten certified or you've already become a coach and you have a few clients, or you're a more advanced coach, and then we'll talk about that part too. But whatever the case is, and this is the part that I always ask myself: how do I know what I'm doing is working? Part of it is that you're going to get clients to create results, help them with that, and you're going to get referrals, so that shows in your business as well, and you're going to get connected to all sorts of people. But everybody hits a plateau there, and it's like, what if I'm stuck in this space where I've created this world, and I know that there are better ways to support people, but I don't know yet. And that wasn't, and a lot of times when I think back to like 4 or 5 years ago when I used to coach, when I think back to those sessions that I did, I just want to go back and say sorry to some of my clients, but I can't. All I can do is move forward, and I can imagine a version of me 5 years from now and saying that about me now, which is kind of scary. But this is the journey. We're learning. So, and here's the challenge, is that when you mentioned that imposter syndrome and how we get focused on ourselves, we're in our head a lot of times. We don't know, we perceive ourselves a certain way and what we do, but how others perceive us, especially other coaches, when they see what we're trying to do and then they give us feedback, it can completely change the trajectory of how we move our business forward. So I just wanted to maybe backtrack and say, like, where do coaches start as they're starting out, whether they've gone through a certification or not? How do they continually improve? Part of it is, I mean, coaches are generally learners. They're going to consistently learn and do all sorts of stuff. But what we're talking about is a little bit different. This is live practice and feedback. It's more than just taking in information. It's understanding what's working and what's not working and what is the impact of that. So I'd love to know your take on that, Michelle, because you've been in this world for a while, much longer than I have. So what are your thoughts about that? If we start from the beginning, like what is that? Because you've probably gone through different variations of it. What does that look like?
Well, first of all, I was laughing when you said, apologizing to, your past clients. I can remember when I first started out, I would literally sometimes have sessions with clients and I would think to myself, I should have paid them for this session, not them paying me. So I get that. I get that. And actually it was kind of funny because I mean there were plenty of times when I'd be like helping them through something and I would have this aha about myself and I would think I should be telling myself this, right? So no, I get that. I think one of the things that you said that I think is so valuable is the feedback piece. When we are doing live coaching, when we're practicing our coaching with others, and being able to know, where we can improve, not only assessing yourself, that's one thing I do think we need to assess ourselves, and that's not to say to be harsh, right? Because what tends to happen sometimes is we can be really hard on ourselves. I mean, I know I can be very hard on myself at times. And so the assessment of self when you're coaching isn't necessarily to beat yourself up or to look for everything that you do wrong, but it's really to take an objective view of, okay, what did I do well? What could I do better? Because you're not going to start out perfect. Like there's number one, no such thing. There's going to be plenty of times you're going to have a session and you're going to be like, oh man. But it's to be able to learn from that every time. It's that growth. And then, having feedback when you're doing beta coaching with somebody else, to have the feedback from them to say, man, when we got on the call, I felt like this, whether it's, a positive or a negative, if it's, I didn't feel like we connected, or if it's your energy was low or it was high or whatever, to learn from the feedback and then know how to tweak and remedy. Like that's what growth is all about, is we're constantly improving.
One of the things that I love the most, that I found the most value in the beta coaching, specifically in our community, the CMC, we kind of have these areas which we assess each other and ourselves in after every session. And so it's not just, if I was coaching you, Michelle, it's not just you giving me feedback, but it's a reality check. And so it's like, okay, one of the things that we assess for is impact. And for me, this is where I miss the boat the most, I have realized. I will get done with a session. I have this perspective that when a client has an epiphany, a life-changing shift in perspective, they're going to let me know super obviously. They're going to be like, oh my God, they're going to be like, like, that's what I'm looking for. And most often what happens is they just get like this, and they get this blank look, and then their wheels are turning. And so we get to the end of a session and I'm like, okay, impact. So how significantly did my coaching help you shift your impact? And I rate myself and I say like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say maybe we did a 4 today. And they're like, what? You rocked my world. Like, I'm at a 10. Like, you said this thing. And so there's this total disconnect that I would have completely missed.
Yes.
Had I not gotten that feedback and had I not rated myself. So I think there's the reality check of not just getting that feedback, but of rating myself and then checking it out. Did I miss cues? Did I really get it?
Yes, you know what? You hit it right there. And I think that's what's so cool about doing that, where you self-assess, but then you also have the feedback. Because think about that disconnect. You're like 6 points different. And that's probably because you're hard on yourself, right? And so there's not that realistic perspective, because again, it's all about service. It's all about the benefit to the client. And so when you can have that back and forth communication. And by the way, I was going to say, you brought up the fact that we sort of have a system for how we have that conversation at the end with feedback. That's something that I think is so valuable, because sometimes, to assess yourself, if you're not kind of following a system, you can tend to just focus in on all the negative, like, oh, I screwed up this, I did that or that. No. The system that you're talking about, that if I could share that a little bit with everybody,
Yeah, please.
is really powerful because, like you said, impact. Did you make an impact? What were the actions? Did you challenge the client enough? And challenge is something that's so important as a coach, right? Because we're not there to just be their pal or their friend. We want to challenge them. That's what they're paying us for. Do you have the kind of energy that either A, brings that client up if they're super low, or kind of grounds them if they are all over the place? And when you work with someone who's a high performer, a lot of times they come in and they're like firing because they have a million things on their plate, and you have to ground them. So like all the little specifics that CMC uses to evaluate and assess after a call, really, really helpful because there's focus, there's a guide. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys brought that up. So we're gonna share the PDF for you with you guys at the end. It's in fact it's on our website, and we have a training that we're gonna put out. It might be out by the time this podcast is released, or it might not. But the PDF is already there on our website that you can look at coachingmasterycommunity.com. Which is essentially a tool that helps you self-assess, but it helps you get assessment from another coach if you're practicing your coaching with them. And that's the challenge. So, I mean, I've been in so many different conversations with coaches who are more experienced than me, who are less experienced than me, who are probably around the same levels as me in terms of skill sets. And it's the process, like Michelle said, helped me kind of anchor down and look at both the positive and negative on that. And now, because I've done it so many times, it's like I look through those action orientation, challenge, impact, energy, all those areas I think through when I'm self-assessing, but also when I'm assessing others too, but just rating ourselves and seeing like, and out of those assessments comes a discussion that's incredibly valuable. And every time I've seen that I've been coached by another coach and I've given them assessment, or they have assessed my coaching, I've learned something that I've tangibly used in my coaching, whether it's in group coaching or one-on-one coaching. I've actually been able to use it. And I want to backtrack a little bit, because when I started out, like one of the most common ways that most coaches, like if you're part of a community, more than likely you would be coaching them, coaching another coach, and that coach in return would be coaching you, which is actually a good system because it gets you started and gives you encouragement and confidence. And a lot of times you're at a similar level. And you're like, the things that you don't know and the things and I did that for like years with my my peers. And there are a lot of positive points to that, is because it keeps you in the game. At least even if you don't have clients yet, or even if you have a few clients, it helps you keep improving. And then another variation of that practice for me, what that looked like, was grabbing onto my friends and relatives. Let me coach you. That went horribly for the most part, but some of them were good. And that actually, like, I can directly ask, hey, how did it go? But they don't, I mean, the only thing they know is what the impact of that for them, but they can't really give me from a professional standpoint what I could improve, what I couldn't. Even the things that they would say is like, how do I work with that? I don't know, but it would be helpful to an extent. And then as we started, I mean, the Coaching Mastery community, we're coaches. Like, we've done this for a while, and out of so many iterations came a process. And one of the things that became unique was not just the process of assessment was, and this is something Jeff Cockrell came up with, the founder of Coaching Mastery community, was that we created that chain. And I think the coaching chain really changes how we do things, and in terms of coaching, because it doesn't affect. And so then I'll explain that. So right now there's Dr. Sherry and Michelle and myself on this call. So the way it works is I'd be coaching Michelle would be coaching Dr. Sherry would be coaching me. So this completely changes the dynamics of the relationship. Now, Michelle is only a coach to Dr. Sherry. She's not client for her. So that changes the relationship. That is an actual coaching relationship. And on top of them, Dr. Sherry is a professional coach, so she can assess it from a client's perspective, but also from a coach's perspective. And then what we do is we come together after we've done direct feedback. We come together in a discussion like this and figure out, well, what worked in the process, what didn't work. And just the evolution of that over the past 2 years, the things that I've learned in that process has been incredible. Like, I don't think I would have grown to this extent had I not have had a process like this to help me move forward. So I'm just curious, Michelle, because you started way back before what is the online coaching became cool. So like, how did it go? Like, what did you notice in different masterminds and with different processes that you went through with coaching, and what did you see around this stuff?
Yeah. So you know what? I think what you just brought up about the kind of the circle of how things work, I have found to be really valuable, because when you're doing, and not to, there's totally nothing wrong with, coaching a friend and then that friend coaching you, but I really love that you get into that mindset of, I am this person's coach, and the next week you're not switching off and they're coaching you. So I think that difference in the way CMC does it is really valuable, because then you always are showing up as the coach, or you're always showing up as the client. But the other thing that I think is extremely valuable that you kind of mentioned was that discussion afterwards. And so in addition to the assessment and the evaluation, what I have found is that after the coaching session's over, there's so much value in having a discussion with another coach about how to tweak or master something that you might be working on. And you can say, like, how did this go? Did you feel this? Because this is what I was aiming for. And they can really give you that feedback. And I have found for myself that sometimes, even more so than practicing the coaching, I've gotten tremendous value out of the conversation or the discussion afterwards, because you can just go to a whole nother level. And it's kind of interesting, because there have been plenty of times where I've been talking with my client afterwards, and we're talking about how something and we went and we like both have an aha. We're both going, oh my gosh, totally gonna try that next time. Like, yes, that's good stuff. And I think that again, that discussion and the value after is huge. And the other thing that I want to bring up, and I kind of brought this up earlier, was the commitment. One of the things that you guys do so well is keep everything very organized. There's a lot of structure to, our coaching, and making sure that we're all doing it, because the one thing that I know that can happen is we all get busy and then we don't stay committed. If you're just coaching with a friend and you kind of have this, hey, yeah, let's do some beta coaching together. It's easy to say, oh gosh, you know what, something's come up and I can't do it today, or I can't do it this week. And, one of the things that I feel like everyone in our community, and since I started being a part of CMC, is that we really treat it as a professional situation. We should, when we're the coach, I always I make contact with my client for that series. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to schedule this. We're going to get this in. And I treat them just like I would any other client that I have. And that's the way also I've been treated as the client. So just some really simple things that CMC does that takes this beta coaching to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and you also kind of alluded to, and so when you have that relationship as a coach, and now as a coach, you also have a coach. Mm-hmm. So when you're going out there, and this is a very important piece that coaches miss, and this is something Rich Litvin, I think in his book, The Prosperous Coach, talked about, is if you don't have a coach and you're trying to sell coaching, shouldn't be doing that. Because at some point your client is going to ask you, and I've been asked that several times by now, do you have a coach? How has it gone for you? And you'd be sure. It's just a lack of, there's an incongruence there. that you're selling
Absolutely.
something that you probably don't believe in. And a lot of coaches will wait, well, when I get paid at a level I did in the beginning, then I'll get a coach. But the reality is that we need it from the beginning. And this is what we try to tell clients, because for me, it's a lot of times the chicken and the egg complex, because my clients would tell, well, when I get this, I'll sign up for a coach. I'm like, this is going to help you get that.
Yes.
So we need to, a process like this helps you, it keeps you in the game. And I just want to share one perspective. I worked with very experienced coaches and collaborated with them, and I've seen at points that they've lost track of this piece. They don't have you can tell they don't have a coach because they're all up in their head, and at some point they kind of just went towards things in their own, with their own tunnel vision, and some things are working, but a lot of things are falling apart, but they're not even able to see it because they don't have somebody that would challenge them and get them to come out of that and say, hey, what do you think is working? What's not working? Why are the people in your team reacting like this? Why is this process not working? How do you think you're showing up as a leader? If we're not being challenged, especially if we're at levels of leadership, we're running organizations, we're collaborating with others, then that tends to create problems. So whether you're in the beginning stages or later stages, a coach needs to have a coach. And this could be a process that kind of adds to that. And maybe a coach needs multiple coaches. I'm beginning to feel like I would need that moving forward. So yeah, I wanted to touch on that piece as well. Sherry, you wanted to add something? Sorry, I might have.
Yeah, when you said that you've seen very experienced coaches, and I think I know where you're talking. But I want you to unpack that a little bit, because people are going to be listening to this and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not all in my head. Like that's not me. But it probably is, at least some of the time. So when you say coaches are all up in their head, how would one identify that they're too much living here and not enough kind of the whole life perspective?
So, and that's the thing is, and if you go towards, like, for me, one of the most important aspects of life is self-awareness. And one of the hardest things to do is to know yourself in life. and that is the journey of getting to know yourself. And this is a journey, this is an adventure. And the challenge is that you're trying to see yourself. And it might be an impossible process a lot of times because you're consistently evolving. Now, the problem with that is that you trying to see yourself from your perspective is not enough. You need an outside perspective. And this is not like, coaching is an evolution of something human beings have been doing for thousands of years. Like, if you go back in history, every community had a guide of some sort that would ask those questions. Every community had a spiritual guide. Every community had these elders who would get you to think about things, people differently. They were part of our structures, our communities. But as you see the evolution of human beings going from community to nuclear families, industrial age, a lot of those things broke down. It like, that doesn't exist. And so the need for coaching and guidance and mental health that started emerging more and more because it's not part of our system anymore. Even when you go to spiritual traditions, whether it be in India or all other places, anybody who is going on a journey to discover who they are and live a better life, they would need a guide in that process. And I think a big part of that is that it's not easy to know who you are yourself. Somebody needs to look at your life from outside and tell you what you're seeing and what you're not seeing in the process, and let you make the assessment, because we will be seeing some things, other things will completely miss it. And this is what I've seen and coaches and influencers who grow at a level and they're like, oh, I've made all the growth that I've done a lot of work, and I'm just going to read my books. I'm just going to keep having clients, and I'm going to move this business forward. But at some point, they stop growing and they don't realize it. And they associate growth with mental learning. That's not what growth is. That's an aspect of it. Growth requires you to question what you're doing as well as others around you. But you might not know how to question yourself in that process. Yeah. Because you are within the process. you're in the forest. You can't see it. And somebody needs to get up at 10,000 feet from there. We've heard these things in business to see what's happening around you. What is the impact of your actions in your environment, in your family, in your business, in your community, especially when you get to a point where you're impacting other people. And this is something actually Brendan Burchard, I remember he shared this too. I remember in one of his trainings, he's like, I see this pattern quite a bit where these influencers, they get to a point where they get really good at what they do, but they get disconnected with the other communities. And then they start to notice that their business starts to go down at some point. That's when they start to feel the pain, because it's too late. I feel like at that point, not too late in the sense you've already impacted people negatively in that process and yourself. So at that point, they're like, what's wrong? What's happening? And then they come back to the community. They start seeing things from a different angle because they have other people sharing different perspective. They have other people to help them think through this differently. And that might not take the form of a coach, but that might be a mastermind. So whatever the case is, when we get stuck too much in our ways, we tend to naturally stop growing. And this is also a human thing, that human beings were a social species. Our mind doesn't actually operate alone for long. It breaks down, our thought processes break down. It is dependent on a community to move forward. And the problem is we don't have communities. So we have to create these models of communities to help us move forward. Hence, like something like part of being something like a mastermind or a community, but also consistently having a coach to challenge you to see what's happening. Are you still connected to the vision? Is your heart still in it? Or are you just doing it for the sake of doing it because you've been doing it for so long? Are you still impacting people more positively? I mean, there's always going to be positive and negative impact, but are your actions leading to something that you might regret later on? Like, we don't know how to answer those unless somebody stops us from our day-to-day routine and says, shocks us into, hey, what's going on here? This is what I'm noticing.
One of the coolest things that I've been able to use the beta coaching for, and I'd love to hear your guys' experience on this, is I use it for kind of refining the process. With like, for example, with certified high performance coaching or other coachings, there's a structure, there's a process, but we all have backgrounds. We all have other things that we are experts in, and it's how do we integrate our own personal knowledge and experience into a framework, or maybe we're working on developing our own framework. And the beta coaching I think is such an amazing time to like test the stuff out, to try it out. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do something different today with Michelle. Let's see how it goes. And then we do it. And then afterwards I'm like, okay, I totally didn't know what I was doing here, but I was trying to do this and trying to integrate this and trying to get you there and how to go. So you can kind of unpack behind the scenes a little bit and get a lot more specific feedback as you're trying to kind of really develop some of these new areas. Kind of going back to that imposter syndrome. It's like, you don't have to pretend like I got this all, I'm an expert at this. It's really being able to say, I'm trying some new stuff here. Help me. Have you guys kind of tested the waters with beta coaching in that way?
I totally have. Yeah. I was actually, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about something I did this last round of coaching, and it literally had the same conversation. Like, I did it in the session, and then after it was over, the funny thing is there was something that my client commented on, like, wow, that was so cool. And I go, that was so funny because that's the first time I've ever done that. And she was like, really? And I said, yeah. So then we had this whole discussion about it, which is why, like I was saying earlier, I think at the end, that discussion is so powerful. Like, you really learn so much. Not just the practice of what you're doing, but yeah. And I think that's awesome. That's what beta coaching is, right? It's that opportunity to try new things, to see what might work, to stretch yourself, to go to another level and, see how it goes. And it might feel uncomfortable, but that's why you're practicing it. And, just to talk about what Faisal said a second ago is when you are stretching yourself, like you're talking about there, Dr. Sherry, part of what gives you that confidence to go and do that and challenge yourself and try that is doing your own work, which is why being the client or having a coach yourself is so important, because in order to always show up as your best, you got to be doing your own work too.
Yeah, and now I love that from both of you, the perspective that like the whole process of coaching, at least from my perspective from the beginning, it has been a process of experimentation, even if you have a framework, because what I've been trying to understand, how can I add unique value within this framework myself? And that is not an easy thing to figure out. And what, if you've done coaching for a while, what you will find is that the areas that you can impact a lot is actually very connected to your deep down experiences in life, the things that you've learned, the things that you've grown in. And a lot of times we might term that the art of coaching. And that's uniquely connected to how you've grown in life as well, and you've gained other perspective that helps you make those connections. So you might have a framework that generally take people through a process, but the actual impact comes in when you start to discover, how can I uniquely support this person in this process? And that took a lot of experimentation for me to get to a point. I'm not saying I'm there, but what I'm saying is that there are areas that I can support people in, but few coaches are able to go there. And the reason for that is because I've done a lot of experimentation. A lot of that experimentation happened within those beta coaching experiences because first of all, I felt safe to try a lot of those things. But then that also gave me the confidence to try those things with clients too in different ways. And then the experimenting just went out of control. At this point, everything is an experiment by now. So
I feel like a bad scientist.
It's like, I can't control this shit anymore. So the impact of this is, and I'll give you a specific scenario around this. So a couple of years back, I got involved in this community where I actually got the opportunity to coach clients that I had never coached, and they were actually some of my ideal clients. And the challenge that I found as I started out, I was very excited and I was able to support them in some way, but pretty quickly I assumed my skill sets were not enough. And I needed to level up. I needed to understand how I can truly serve these clients. And it wasn't like, oh, I just want to be better as a coach. I actually knew that they needed support in this area. I didn't know how to do that, even though I had a process and everything. So then that's what made me come back. Part of it was obviously learning and understanding those challenges through reading, through taking courses and through certifications and other things. But a big part of it was coming back and working with other coaches and getting into these kind of conversations. And hey, this is what I'm dealing with. How do you think we can move? Like, how have you dealt with this before? Or you're trying something within a session. Hey, let me experiment with this. Give me some feedback afterwards. Did this work? Did it land? Did it not? Did it help you create an insight around this? That's what challenged me to keep growing within that community. And I started serving and supporting these clients. But in the process, I grew as a coach. And I want to connect this, and I've shared this with some of our members before, especially those who are starting out. A lot of times the concern is, I need more clients, which is important for business. Here's the problem. So if I were to hand, let's say about 10 of my clients, and I've asked this question to a newer coach who are starting out, how many of those do you think you will keep after 6 months, after 3 months? How many of those would you get referrals out of? And that was a painful pill for me to swallow initially, because I wasn't getting referrals. I wasn't able to keep many of these clients initially. Why? Because I didn't have the skill sets to serve at that point. I didn't have, I hadn't gone deep enough to serve them at the level they needed me to serve them. And this is important for one. It's important because skill sets are important in any process. Whatever you're doing, you need to master that. You need to be on that path of mastery. If this is important to you, if you're passionate about this and you're trying to serve the world in that way. And the second piece is the business. A lot of times we focus on the marketing and all the other aspects of it. But if what you're doing is not really serving, and that doesn't mean you're a bad coach. what that means is that you are not at the level where you were going to be attracting the clients because you haven't learned to serve people at that level yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what picks up businesses, I'd say, more than anything else. And I'd love to hear your thoughts around the business piece that's connected to this practice. Michelle.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I started out, my expertise was certainly not in business. I knew nothing about business. I had been a school counselor for 10 years before I got into coaching. And I thought, well, I know how to help people, but I certainly don't know how to get them to me. So the business part of it was big. But I think that, like you said, if you're not, even you can do all the marketing in the world, but when you bring people in, if you can't help them, if you're not serving them, they're not going to stay on for the long haul. They're not going to continue to work with you. So, having that balance as an entrepreneur of having the business skills and that kind of knowledge, but also making sure that you're serving the people that you want to attract and bring into your community is big, because you cannot sustain a business for a long period of time without that. And I've seen over the years, so many people, they have this heart, they want to be of service, they want to help, but they cannot sustain the business because they, well, I don't know why, but various reasons. But I mean, I think that one big piece of that is being able to always be serving at a high level. And like you're talking about referrals, like referrals are so huge. If you are doing a great job, if you're helping somebody move forward in their life, achieve their goals, or whatever your coaching um, process does for them, then they're going to be talking about it. They're going to be sharing that with others. They're going to be saying, hey, you know what? Like, or people are just going to see the difference in their lives. And, I think that's important that, we have that balance as entrepreneurs of not only the business side and doing our best to learn and grow there, but obviously learning and growing at our craft of coaching.
Yeah, I'd love to see Dr. Sherry's take, because she's big on the business piece. How does this connect it?
Oh, I'm loving this. And what's coming to my mind is this is an obvious phenomenon that we have accepted in so many areas of life. But when we apply it to our business, all of a sudden it becomes personal and we feel deflated. And so I'll expand on that a bit. So I have a background in educational psychology, and in teaching, it's called scaffolding learning. It's like you learn one thing and then you build on it, and you build on it, and you build on it. It's a completely accepted practice, and how we grow in life. An example of how that fails is when somebody wins the lottery. How long does it take for them to lose the $500 million that they just won? They will pretty much inevitably lose it or spend it all because they did not have the discipline and build the knowledge on how to manage finance as well. And so coaching is the same thing. I'm relatively new in coaching. Like I've been a psychologist for almost 20 years, and I've done things on there, but it's a very different mindset shifting into coaching. Hugely different, which I am loving, but I still feel like the imposter syndrome myself as a coach. So Faisal, if you threw 10 of your clients at me today and I had to meet with them every week, I can connect well. I'm great at listening. I've got really good energy, but I know that one of the areas that I need to grow in is challenge. And so I might not challenge them enough to get them to re-enroll at this stage of the game. And so I need to get better at all of these things in a very, growth oriented, stair stepping kind of way. And so, but yet as coaches, we jump into the coaching world and we're like, all right, I'm a coach. I've got my flag. I've got all of this stuff that, and now I'm ready to see 30 clients a week. Yes. That's it. there's a lot of growth there that needs to happen, both in the business, but in your own, capacity to handle that much. And so I think that's a mindset that I've noticed in myself, and I see with other coaches, that we just assume for some reason that our coaching practice is going to grow differently than and can have a quicker path than every other area of life in learning. So I would just encourage people to think about, how quickly they're really feeling like they should be growing, and then feeling bad about it because it's not going that way. Really, there just maybe some things that they need to learn and get dialed in as they go.
You know
Yeah.
what, Dr. Sherry, and that brings back that point of why it's so important for us coaches to also have coaches or have a coach, because starting a business it's not for the faint of heart, right? I've worked with so many clients who they're they're afraid to put their website out there and all this, because I think they think all of a sudden as soon as they put their website out that they're going to have millions of people flocking to them and they're not ready. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't work that way. It does take time, and it is a process. And so to have a coach that you can be working through, not only, if it's the business side of things, but just your own mindset and your own growth on how to, how to have no's. People are going to say no to you. You're going to have sessions with somebody, you're going to offer them the opportunity to work with you, and they're going to say no. And how do you deal with that? And so the growth that comes as you're becoming an entrepreneur, or you're, starting your business, it's necessary, I think, to have that support, because if not, it can be really hard to keep going. And so whether you have that, again, in a community like CMC, where you have other coaches going, oh man, I know, I tried this, it didn't work. That was so hard. What are you guys doing to do this? How do you do that? Like, having that feedback is so valuable with other coaches, but then also having your own coach to work through that stuff, that shit that gets in your head, that you've got to move past in order to be able to truly be of service and to go to that next level for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. There's one other area I want to go into. I think it's really important. So one aspect of beta coaching is that let's say you're practicing and experimenting with other coaches, and you're getting feedback. You're also self-assessing this process as we've been discussing it. But there's actually just like this, we're having this discussion. There's a different aspect of coaching, which I alluded to in the beginning, but we didn't expand on it. Is that, let's say, and this is what we do in CMC, that we've done this from the beginning. On Thursdays, we do this where we come together and we discuss topics around coaching and now business topics as well, but specifically in relation to coaching mastery. And one of the things that Sherry's saying, so how do we challenge clients more? Especially, how do we challenge? Oh, I like that music. Where is that from?
Where is that coming from?
Where is that coming from?
Let's just call out the obvious, you guys. I don't know about YouTube, but I'm having all kinds of technical issues. Now we got music going. I know you guys can see this happening back here in the background, right? Like, I have a green screen, it's pretty obvious because you can actually see my black.
I thought it's some kind of like a lens thingy going on.
I don't know what's happened. I tested it before we got on and it all looked great. And I should have just left the black bookshelves out, but they're so dark. I was like, oh, I need some light. And then my light's falling down on me. Now I have sunlight coming in. Somebody's got music playing. Like, you guys, no one's perfect. This is why we work at things. This is why we practice. This is why, and guess what? The other thing too, we have to be real, right? And when you are starting out as a coach, you want everything to just be so great and so right. And you know what? Shit's going to happen. You're going to mess up and you're going to have to be honest about it. And the other thing that you can do, and, Dr. Sherry was talking about that, the imposter syndrome again, and how, she's got so much experience and so much knowledge in other areas, but now she's doing something new and it feels uncomfortable, and that's okay. And to be real and honest with our clients and be like, yeah, you know what? I get that. Man, I've had to struggle with that too. Or to laugh at yourself. Like that's it. I've been dying to call this out, like, and be like, you guys, my green screen is a disaster.
It looks great though. I don't know. It looks like you've done this by design. If you didn't say that, I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I've got, but yeah, anyway, I don't know. That just, it felt like we needed a light moment there because we have all kinds of nonsense going on. But I mean, that's part of being real, right? And by the way, that's part of what I also love about our CMC community is you can show up and you can be real and you can say, so back to what you were talking about, Faisal, is like you have a difficult client or you're wanting to work on challenging more. You bring it to the group and you can be real and you can be honest and you can go, you guys, how do you deal with a client like this? Or I need to work on challenging more. Anybody have any thoughts, suggestions, ideas? Like it is a community that is so safe to be able to show up in and be real. And honestly, when you're an entrepreneur and you work from home, like most of us do, it's so nice to have that support and that feedback from others. And to, if nothing else, realize like, man, I'm not alone here. Somebody else gets it. And so then you have the opportunity to learn from each other. Because as you were saying earlier, Faisal, we all do things a little differently because we've all come from a bit of a different background. And I think that's one of the things that I also love about being the client is a coach will do something with me and I'll like, oh, that was good. Like, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to try that out on my clients. And so, yeah, anyway.
Yeah. And that literally happened to me yesterday. Like Carson from our community, he did such a great session with me and he was coaching me. And there was something he did within there. He asked a question at the end, I'm like, and it wasn't like a sales question, but I was like, that would be a perfect question to ask in a moment like that. And I'm not going to forget that. In fact, I'm going to use that to help clients make a decision and when they're signing up for coaching, because like he came out so authentically and asked, how can I, moving forward, how do you think I can serve you? And it's like, it would fit perfectly when I asked him, he's like, no, that wasn't a sales question. That was just, it felt natural to ask that question. I'm like, that's genius. And that came out of conversations like that. So now, and I want to expand that a little bit. So these conversations that we have once a week around coaching mastery and business mastery, there's one key area that I've noticed that almost always comes up. So whether we've talked about emotional intelligence, we've talked about challenging clients, we've talked about leveraging trauma in coaching, whatever we've talked about, it comes down to perspective. And the expansion of perspective for coaches is incredibly important. Like I think it's probably one of the most important aspects of coaching, because here's what happens. So as coaches, we are naturally learners. We're gonna learn. We're gonna want to know how things work in the world. And the reason for that is that we need to understand why people behave the way that they do. Because if we don't understand that, we don't even know how to ask questions to direct them. And why do they think the way they do? Why do they feel what they feel? There's a big part of curiosity in there, but you need to have a perspective of a bigger ground to work in, to know which direction to take them a lot of times. And that comes from having a wider perspective. And what that means, and this is where it connects back to us with our own perspective, it's not enough. And and I've shared this before, a lot of times when I'm in sessions, I don't feel like I'm the only one there. I feel like there's an army of coaches behind me because I've been in so many of these discussions. And that perspective is not just, oh, this is how I'm challenging clients, because a lot of times those conversations go towards bigger things like, well, how have we been as human beings dealing with it in different ways, in different cultures, in different settings, in different contexts? It takes us sometimes to history, sometimes to spiritual traditions, sometimes to psychology, sometimes to areas of performance studies. Whatever it is, it helps us understand the human condition better. It helps us understand ourselves better and helps us see, maybe the thing that I think that I'm so passionate about that I'm trying, maybe that's not the thing that will move this person forward. And I'll give you a couple of specific examples. So early on in my coaching, now I'm not I came from a religious background, but I stopped being religious for a while. And then naturally, because I felt a lot of pain, kind of went against it for a while. It was like, oh, that gave me all that pain, I'm going to go against it. And then after a while, I started noticing that I just created an open a world where I don't know how to navigate. And that created even more pain for me. And I like a lot of times I noticed this dynamic in my clients where they're experiencing a lot of pain, but because I had that bias around my own pain, I would try to direct them away. Like there are other options, you know. The problem is that that is the worst strategy you can use, because if I spent many sessions trying to, and not to trying to get them away from their tradition and religion, but trying to get them to see maybe there's a better way where you won't feel that much pain. And I tried that for months and years until I got it and started noticing that in clients, and I brought those in discussion like, holy shoot, that is not the right strategy. The right strategy became is how do we leverage this person's religion and tradition and help them understand it better and help them move within the values that they have towards a positive direction. And like, I wouldn't have come up with that because I was stuck in my own experience there. And that completely shifted. And this is why I can literally have a conversation with anybody and I can use their own tradition, their own identity, their own religion to help them create a positive change. I don't need to bring something else into the picture. And that requires bigger perspectives. That's just one example. And I've seen this over and over in coaches who have, let's say, I've seen the other side of it, a coach who's very traditional, who comes from a specific religion, and they're leveraging that for their clients, but the clients don't relate to that. And it looks like they're preaching. And then when I hear that, or other coaches hear that, yeah, this is what it sounds like when you say things like that, whether in a group setting or one-on-one setting, they're like, oh, let me put a pause on that. My beliefs that's not the important thing. How can I help this client in this way? There might be a different strategy around this. And this is what we begin to discover, that the world is much bigger than our beliefs, our ways of looking at things. The people are much more complex than we've been taught in the past. We're learning more and more that there's a lot of complexity in how we think, what we feel, and how we behave. I mean, the field of psychology is expanding on that. Neuroscience is expanding on that. But just these discussions help us understand so we can practically help people move forward. That is a very, very crucial component of growing as a coach, whether you're a new coach or a coach who's done a lot. And I just want to share that part, that I'd love to hear your feedback, both of you, if you guys experience something similar, or I could be completely off in this.
Michelle?
Well, I think you're right. I think that perspective, having a broader perspective, is important. And you know what? I mean, like, let's just make it as simple as possible. Male and female, right? To get the perspective from a male coach, and how men think versus women, even that can help you as a coach if you're a female and you are, and you're coaching a man, or vice versa. Like, it's, I think you're right. Like, that perspective is so valuable. And learning, again, you were saying something earlier about how when it's you and you're in it, it's hard to really see, right? It's like even when we look in the mirror, we never see the real thing. We're seeing a reflection of something. And so to get outside perspective, to have someone sort of, hold the light for us or help us see something a different way is so valuable, because we can get stuck and we only know what we know, right? Like, that's it. You can only know what you know. And the only way to know more is to learn more, is to broaden your perspective, is to get other insight. And so, yeah, I think that's, just another component of going to another level as a coach is always being open to the learning and to getting greater perspective.
Yeah. And we see examples of this in other industries. In the leadership field, they call it 360s. They're huge. And that's where, there's a whole organizations, whole companies that will come into a corporation and do a 360 assessment, which is basically, if I'm the CEO, they'll come in, I'll assess myself, but then they're going to talk to the folks that I manage and the folks that manage me. And it's this, 360 degree perspective of me to help me learn and grow. leadership space has recognized that this is a critical piece to help somebody grow. We do this in sports coaching, right? Like if you really want to get good at your craft, people are videoing you. If you're a wrestler, they're videoing you wrestling, or your football game, and then your coach is watching it to find out what you did right and wrong. You're supposed to watch it to find out what you did right and
Yeah.
wrong, so you can tweak and correct it for next time so you can be even better. So in all these different areas of life and disciplines, there is an external component to helping us get better. And so why wouldn't we do that with, being in this kind of coaching? So I think it's critical.
Yeah, and there's a point of awareness here about the coaching field, is that the coaching field is not like a recognized field in itself. It's becoming that because there's a demand and need for that. And we're literally the pioneers of this field. We're building it. Just like there was a point psychology didn't exist as a field. It was like people like Carl Jung and these guys, they started to turn and make it into a field and help people understand that this is really going to add value. But as this is evolving, as this is growing, all of these things eventually will become standards, but there are no standards right now. That's why we see coaches from all over the place, people who have done this for a little bit, people who have certifications and education behind it, people who don't, and like all sorts of different coaches. But at some point, this is going to become a standardized process that is going to be part of the human system. And we are setting the stage, and that's very exciting for me, because if we're setting the stage, we're creating something really powerful. And I want to just add one more thing in terms of that perspective, bigger perspective, because it doesn't just help us in coaching one-on-one. And I literally realized that yesterday. I mentioned the negotiation in the beginning of this this conversation, and I'm sitting there with 6 other people, a few from the organization we're trying to create a coaching program for, a few coaches in there. And there was a point, I'm hearing the conversation, but I'm hearing a lot of assumptions and I'm trying to make sense of it. And I had to self-assess later on after the session when I'm looking back at it. The only reason I was able to challenge this organization, I literally said it this way, I'm going to have to challenge some of your assumptions here. It wasn't necessarily just the coaching piece, but it was out of these kind of conversations. It was out of being in conversations with other influencers and change makers and other coaches in the field that I was able to help them understand that you're trying to support people in a specific business, but what we're trying to do as coaches is help people create a bigger vision for life. We're helping them unblock from areas that they don't know how to unblock themselves. They don't know how to unstuck themselves. We're trying to help them move forward in ways that your mentors don't have the skill sets around. And the value that this is going to bring to your community will be exponential. And they were thinking about it linearly in the sense that, we need to align topics. I'm like, you don't necessarily need to do that. We need to help, and we need to serve people to move forward in their life. We need to help people connect. We need to help people create a bigger vision for their life, especially people at that level. And I was able to do that because of all these perspective changing discussions with other coaches who have done so much work in the space. So it helps you in so many other different areas of business, leadership, and so many other things. So I think just to wrap that up, I think it's such a crucial aspect of your development as an influencer, not just as a coach.
So the beta coaching with CMC will help you with your hostage negotiations. That's
Yes,
right.
that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I didn't make that clear at
Perfect.
all, did I?
I'm just kidding.
If you guys got nothing else out of that today, you got
Right?
that.
Right?
You're going to become a good hostage negotiator. If the coaching business fails, you have another business to cut.
Yep. On an aside, so I was a psychologist in the Air Force, and I got an experience to participate in some hostage negotiations with the Office of the Special Investigation for the Air Force, which is called OSI. That was the most fascinating, I think, experience in the Air Force for me was getting in kind of in that. It was crazy. I'm not an expert negotiator, but it was fascinating. Michelle, there's 4 questions that we love to ask everybody that comes on here. So we're going to ask those of you today. The first one is, what is one of the most influential books for you in your coaching journey?
Oh gosh. there have been so many. I actually think back to years and years and years ago. The first book of Brendan Burchard's that I ever read was The Charge. And it was long before I ever realized, I think before he was even, High Performance Habits had not come out yet. But I took that book and I actually not only applied it to my own life, but I started coaching clients on it. Like, this was before I was a high performance coach. And I was training people on it, because back in the day when I first started, there wasn't a curriculum, there wasn't a process, there wasn't anything to follow. I was making it up myself. And but one of the things that I think out of that book that came that was so powerful for me, and it's been something that I've always continued to think about as I've been along my own personal growth journey and my professional journey as a coach, is the idea that just being comfortable isn't really living to your highest potential. It's, he talks about in The Charge, he talks about there's this, there's the caged life, there's the comfortable life, and then there's the charged life. And honestly, that's something that I still examine today and sort of check myself on. And that's, when I said at the beginning that part of the reason why I decided to become certified as a high performance coach, because I had hit a place in my career as a coach in my business where I was comfortable, I was just going through the motions. And so I think it's so important to always be challenging ourselves to that next level, to really live charged. And so actually, that's probably one of the most influential books that I've encountered.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Michelle, what are some of your hobbies? What do you do in your off time? Assuming you know.
I don't have off time, you guys. Well, okay. So I have two daughters. One of them, we have just gotten off to college. So we have a little teensy bit of spare time, but my girls are very involved in sports. My oldest daughter was a basketball player, and my youngest, they played multiple sports, but they're prime sports. My youngest is a soccer player, and she plays at a very high level. So we travel a lot. There's a lot of time commitment. And so honestly, my hobbies, my family, and being there to watch them play, and just really support that. I would say that's probably my greatest hobby, and my greatest love is my family.
Yeah. I have a feeling that both Faisal and I would also probably say a very similar thing.
Yeah.
What do you suppose separates coaches who are successful? We'll put that in air quotes because, everybody has a different definition of that. But successful coaches from the coaches that fail, they give up, or they never really even get started or get momentum and just kind of fizzle out.
Growth. Quite honestly, personal growth. This is why, going back to talking about how important it is to have a coach. If you're a coach, if you believe in the coaching process and how valuable it is for people, why wouldn't you have a coach? So I think that, to constantly be growing and learning, lifelong learning goes hand in hand with growth, I think. That is it across the board. I think that for anybody's success in life is to always be growing.
Love it. And where do you feel like the field of coaching is headed?
Oh gosh. Well, I really think, and I've probably been thinking this for the last 15 years, but it's just beginning. It really is just beginning. And I see so much need. And what I think is really fantastic is that in society and media, there's becoming a lot more light shed on mental health and helping people deal with their emotions, helping people change their lifestyle from being burnt out and overwhelmed and exhausted to really living a better life. And I personally, I sign every email happiness and success, because I think that you don't have true success if you don't have happiness in your life. And I mean, regardless of what your bank account says, regardless of, anything else, if you're not happy with it, if you're not enjoying life, you're missing true success. And so I think that because of the fact that it's starting to become okay to work on yourself more and more in the media and the exposure that's happening, I think we're going to see continued growth in the need for coaches, because so many people are starting to realize, like, hey, it's not that there's something wrong with me that I need a coach, it's that there's something right, and I want to make it better. I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to be this best version of myself. And that means it's okay to ask for help. And so I think that coaching is just going to continue to get bigger and bigger. And people are going to start seeing the value of it.
Yeah. That just reminded me that when I would go to cocktail parties and people are like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a psychologist. They'd be like,
yeah. And then they shied away from you, right? They don't want to talk to you because.
Exactly. But now I'm like, oh, I'm a high performance coach. Ooh, tell me more. It's like there's this total difference of, what's acceptable or unacceptable.
And after the conversation, I'm also a psychologist.
Right? Right. They're always like, yeah. I'm secretly.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, when I first started coaching and I would tell somebody asked me what I do, they would just look at me like, are you speaking another language? Like, I don't understand what that is. Like, what do you mean? You coach? Like, what sport? Like, no. It's different.
Game of life.
Yeah. And now it's becoming more mainstream, I think, a little bit. And people are starting to get it. And I will tell you, I think that's great, Sherry, that you said, like, people are like, ooh, tell me more, because I'm noticing that as well. Like, I'll start to have a conversation with somebody about what I do, and instead of shying away, people are leaning in and they are interested. And I think that right there is proof that coaching is going to continue to grow, because people are starting to go, oh, wow, that's cool. Tell me more. Where years ago that wasn't the case.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is, at least in certain socioeconomic levels, certain demographics is becoming more and more known. And it's spreading more and more, like you said, with the whole mental awareness piece. People are starting to work on themselves, or they're understanding that they need to, at least. So I want to ask Michelle, where can our amazing viewers find you before I move towards the CMC stuff?
Okay. Well, actually, and can we put this link somewhere? We can just do michelleweimer.com, which I know, well, you can probably see it on the screen, how to spell it, but michelleweimer.com. You can go there and connect with me, send me a message or an email, sign up for a strategy session, or I have something called the Achieve Success System, which is a starter kit that you can sign up for and get for free to kind of get you thinking about, what it is that, like I always say, like, figuring out where you are and where you want to go. Right. And so that this is kind of gives you those first steps to that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. We within the conversation, we talked quite a bit about the assessment tool that we have. And we're actually in the process of putting up a training with it. But the PDF tool is already on our community website. You can go to coachingmasterycommunity.com and download that PDF. You can use it to self-assess, and it will explain everything. And you can use it to assess other coaches if they're doing beta coaching with you. It's a process that we've built out of many iterations and a lot of coaches who are experienced in this field to create assessments like this. So definitely take advantage of that. And as soon as we get the link for the training version, we'll put that link in this podcast episode as well.
Perfect. All right. Amazing. This is like the highlight of the hump day of my week every week. So love it. So thank you so much, Michelle, for gracing us with your presence, sharing your wisdom and your experience. I think sometimes people think about beta coaching as only being relevant for the new coach. And so Exactly. I love that you are able to very succinctly and eloquently speak to the value, even as a coach that's been doing this for over 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This has actually been super fun. And yeah, I mean, I think that, it doesn't matter where you are, what level you're at, there's always potential to continue to grow. And beta coaching it's hands down what helps that growth, So for sure. And
Thank you,
and by the
Michelle.
way, anybody listening, do make sure you guys grab that the sheet that Faisal was talking about, because in addition to the growth, that assessment piece is so important. And I think you guys have done such a phenomenal job with identifying some really key areas that are important to mastering as a coach. And so, yeah, anybody watching that, go and grab that.
Yes. Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you for being here. And it was until our next conversation next week. Hope everyone has an incredible week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.